We've got most of our shaping done, but now, as you can see, we've got this flat. Okay, this is flat. It rounds up and then it's flat, and it's real ugly. So we want this to be a nice curve. So the first thing we're going to do is bring our steel corbies up to grit. If all went well, they're about 120, which is the last belt we did. Now, the steel is much harder than the wood, and so if we just sand it casually, they're going to be raised and you'll be able to feel it. And so what we're going to do is we're going to use our push stick here to keep everything nice and flat. Now, it doesn't take much because there's not much surface area on that steel. Now, I found that even that eventually will raise it, but what I found is when we're doing the strips, that will keep it down with the wood as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a regular pencil and we're just going to mark up the center of our handle. And we're going to take our 220 grit strip and we're going to go back and forth. We're going to try and keep it pretty flat because we just want a gentle curve. It doesn't have to be extreme. And what's going to happen is then we're going to see two curves. We're going to see this curve and then we're going to see this curve, and you can tell that it kind of comes to a point. And then so after we get those two curves, then we're going to go back and just round it out real nice. So to keep this flat, I'm putting some good tension on here, and I'm just sanding until I can't see this pencil anymore. I've got just one little spot here, so I'm going to focus on that. Put this on here again just to double check. It's a tough spot to get. There. So now we've got this nice slight curve. And I've got this line here still, and I'm going to go back. Well, first I'm going to do the same thing, I think, with 320, and then I'm going to round this out with 320. I think 220 is going to be a little bit more aggressive, or a little too aggressive. We've got it very, very slightly raised here in the front one. Personally, I think as long as it's not too bad, don't worry about it. It is what it is. You want to be careful when working this area here. We've cut the tape to sand this tang here, so this is just adhering to the steel. It's not wrapped around this anymore, so you want to be careful you don't miss and slip and bring that tape up, because then you're going to be sanding on the steel. So it's going slowly but surely, but I think I'm going to switch back down to 220. I think I want it to be a little bit, it's going a little slow with the 320, so. Now when you're doing the 220, be careful you don't hit the tang, because we've already brought that to 320. And we don't want to have to redo that. So now I'm back at 320. Now, we want to focus on the front of our handle. Right here. We've got this sharp corner here. So I'm going to take 220 and I'm going to use my finger as a sanding block. And I'm going to pull towards the bottom because I don't want to push up from the bottom and risk raising this tape up. Over here it's so good, it's wrapped around, so I'm not worried about that. So I might go back and forth up on this top end, then pull on this end. And I'm just giving it a nice round over. Now I probably should have done the 220 before I did the 320 on here, but it's a small enough area, it's not going to take long to touch that up. Let me tell you, I used to do this all on the bigger bench vise, vertical like you saw when I was doing the bulk of the shaping, but having it horizontal like this is pretty nice, and I'm pretty glad I made the switch. So now I'm back at 320. Usually doesn't take too long to bring it up to the next grid on this area. Now I'm up to 400. And I'm going to do this side, the whole thing to 400 now. Starting with our flat here, then moving down to a little more round. This is the procedure for every grit that we're going to go up to. Now focusing on each side. Now the tang's 320, this is 400, so I can go down and hit that tang a little, and that would be okay. And from this way, I can hit all parts of this scale. I'm only going to bring it back to the vise in the vertical position to sand on the tang. I don't necessarily have to go like this from that position. I'm going to probably every 3 or 4 grits, just so I can keep everything even. Now we've got it shaped. Now the process for the rest is just bringing it up the grits. I'll now do the other side, and then I'll put it back in the vertical, and I'll just sand the tang then to 400, and then bring it up one more, 800, get all the tang, then put it back on here, do the 800, then 1200, bring it back, 1500, put it back here. I don't like to bring the tang to 2000, I think it's too fine. I'll do then 1500 on here, and then 2000, and then I'm gonna do it 2000 this way, and then 2000 is the final sand with the grain. I've got our knife here, our scale's up to 2000 grit. And so what now I'm gonna do is, I've already got it 2000 going this way. And what I'm gonna do is now I'm gonna line up the grit with the grain. And so first I'm gonna get up here, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna fold this over so it's a little more rigid. And I'm just gonna do it sort of like this. And get the front of that oriented. Then I'll come and I'll get our steel Corby rivets, make sure those are oriented, and then after that I'm just going to come to the side here, other side. It doesn't take much. There. Now I'll do the other side, and then the handle is done. Well, even though our scales are done, our tang, which we brought up to 1200 grit, now I'm just going to gently orient the grit on that, trying not to touch the wood because our wood is at a nice 2000. So I'm going to do this just very carefully. It's okay if you have a few fish hooks. I don't think they're terribly noticeable on the tang. But we're also going to come back on the top here once we finish taking the tape off and matching up our grit with the spine on the blade. And we brought it up. This is 800 grit, by the way, if I didn't already say. The reason we brought it up higher is so when we come back and do this, we're not struggling to take out coarser grip marks. They're finer, so it's easier to put it on there how we want it. Looks like I had a little bit of the coarse marks still left in that spot. This is when you can, it'll really show if you've succeeded in bringing up the grits. You didn't leave anything behind. It appears I have a few coarser lines in there, but I'm just gonna keep sanding like this, avoiding the wood, getting those out. And quick, get the butt here. There. So after I finished the scales, I already took a little bit of the tape off, and then I remembered the tang. Take your time taking it off. You don't want to damage anything. Pulling it off too roughly, it can be kind of tricky. It's just kind of about getting it started. There we go. You can buff the handle with the tape still on. I like to take the tape off and then oil the blade first.